My life was ordinary. Predictable. I worked at a small publishing house, lived in a modest apartment, and kept to myself. As an Omega, I'd learned early that invisibility was protection. I took my suppressants religiously, avoided crowded places during risky times, and built walls so high that loneliness felt like friendship. That Thursday started like any other. I woke up, took my medication, and headed to work. But by noon, something felt wrong. The first sign was the heat creeping up my neck during a meeting. I blamed it on the stuffy conference room. Then came the dizziness, the way my skin felt too tight, too sensitive. My hands trembled as I gathered my papers. "Are you all right?" my coworker asked. "Fine," I lied, already calculating the distance to the door. I barely made it to the elevator before the tremors started. My suppressants had failed. Somehow, impossibly, I was going into heat in the middle of downtown Seoul on a Thursday afternoon. Panic clawed at my throat. This couldn't be happening. I'd been so careful. The elevator descended with agonizing slowness. Each floor felt like an eternity. My vision blurred at the edges, and a desperate, humiliating need began building in my core. I could smell myself, that sweet, unmistakable Omega scent that would draw every alpha within blocks. The lobby was crowded. Too crowded. I pushed through the sea of people, my legs barely supporting my weight. Someone bumped into me, and I nearly collapsed from the contact. Everything was too loud, too bright, too much. I needed to get home. Just 10 more blocks. I could make it. I couldn't make it. By the time I stumbled into the narrow alley behind my office building, my body was betraying me completely. I collapsed against the cold brick wall, sliding down until I was crouched on the ground, arms wrapped around myself. Tears streamed down my face. This was my worst nightmare, vulnerable, exposed, completely at the mercy of my own biology. "Please," I whispered to no one. "Please no." His scent hit me first. Alpha. Strong, overwhelming, like pine and rain and something darker. My body responded instantly, desperately, even as my mind screamed in protest. "Don't come closer," I managed to choke out, but my voice was weak, pleading rather than commanding. He appeared at the mouth of the alley, tall, dark-haired, wearing an expensive suit now rumpled at the edges. His eyes were wild, pupils dilated. He was fighting it too, I realized. Fighting the biological imperative that was singing between us like a live wire. "I'm trying," he said through gritted teeth, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "I'm trying to walk away." But neither of us could. The invisible rope between Omega in heat and Alpha in rut pulled tighter, erasing choice, erasing everything but instinct. "I'm sorry," he breathed, and I wasn't sure if he was apologizing for what was about to happen or for his inability to stop it. What happened next existed in fragments. The desperate press of bodies. His jacket spread beneath me on the dirty ground, a gentleman's gesture in the midst of biological chaos. The way he held my face with surprising gentleness even as we both lost control. Pain and pleasure so intertwined I couldn't tell them apart. When it was over, we lay there breathing hard, the reality of what we'd done crashing down like ice water. He pulled away first, not meeting my eyes as he helped me sit up, steadied me when I swayed. "Are you hurt?" His voice was hoarse, formal, like we'd just been in a business accident rather than something far more intimate and irreversible. I shook my head, unable to speak. Shame burned through me, hot and acidic. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. "I'll call someone. A doctor or—" "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "Just go. Please." He hesitated, clearly torn. For a moment, I thought he might argue, might insist on staying, on taking responsibility. Part of me even wanted him to. But then he nodded slowly, shrugged off his jacket, the one he'd used to protect me from the filthy ground, and draped it over my shoulders. "I'm sorry," he said again. Then he was gone, swallowed by the city's indifferent crowds. I sat there for a long time, wearing a stranger's jacket, trying to remember how to be human again. The next 6 weeks passed in a haze of shame and denial. I told no one. What would I say? That I'd failed at the most basic Omega responsibility, maintaining control? That I'd had a heat emergency in public like some character from a cautionary tale? I burned the jacket. Scrubbed my skin until it was raw. Tried to forget the gentleness in a stranger's hands, the apology in his voice. The pregnancy test sat on my bathroom counter like an accusation. 2 pink lines. Impossible. We'd been together once, in the worst possible circumstances. The odds were astronomical. But Omegaverse biology doesn't care about odds. I scheduled the appointment 3 times before I finally went. The doctor's voice was neutral, professional, as she asked what I wanted to do. As if it were simple. As if choice existed in a world where my own body had already chosen for me. I'm keeping it, I heard myself say, surprising us both. My daughter was born on a rainy April morning. She had dark hair and serious eyes that seemed to look right through me. I named her Hannah, my one, my only, my everything. For 4 years we built a life. Small, quiet, but ours. I convinced myself we were enough. That she'd never need to know about the alley, the stranger, the biology that had chosen for us both. I should have known better. In Omegaverse society, biology always wins. And some alphas never stop searching for what they've lost. The custody papers arrived on Hannah's 4th birthday, delivered by a man in an expensive suit who apologized for the timing. Inside the manila envelope was a lawsuit, a paternity test request, and a photograph that made my blood run cold. It was him. The stranger from the alley. Except he wasn't a stranger anymore. He'd found us. The birthday cake sat untouched on the kitchen table, pink frosting roses melting slowly under the afternoon light. Hannah was in her room, playing with the new stuffed rabbit I'd given her that morning, blissfully unaware that our entire world had just shattered. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I read the documents again. And again. Petition for paternity establishment and custody rights. Plaintiff, Kang Ji-hoon. Even his name felt like a weapon. I'd spent 4 years not knowing it, protecting myself with that ignorance. Now it was printed in cold, legal typeface, making everything real in a way I wasn't prepared for. The knock came 3 hours later. I'd been expecting it, dreading it, but still jumped when it echoed through our small apartment. Through the peephole I saw him. Older than I remembered, or maybe just more real. The expensive suit was still there, but his face looked drawn, tired. Almost nervous. He should be nervous. I opened the door but kept the chain locked. You have no right to be here. I know. His voice was exactly as I remembered, low, careful. But I needed to see you. To explain. Explain. The word came out as a bitter laugh. You're suing me for custody of a child you didn't know existed until, what? A month ago? What's there to explain? For years. He said it quietly, but the words hit like a slap. I've been looking for you for 4 years. I stared at him, my carefully constructed anger faltering. That's impossible. May I come in? Please. Just 5 minutes. Every instinct screamed no. But I could feel Hannah's presence in the apartment behind me, could imagine her curious face peeking around corners. This conversation couldn't happen in a doorway where neighbors might hear. I let him in. He stood awkwardly in my living room, this man who'd been inside my body but never my home. His eyes swept over everything, the worn furniture I'd bought secondhand, Hannah's toys scattered across the floor, the photographs on the wall charting her growth from infant to toddler. Pictures he wasn't in. A history he hadn't shared. She looks like you, he said softly, studying a photo of Hannah from last month. Don't. The word came out sharp. Don't act like you know her. You don't get to look at her pictures and feel sentimental. He turned to face me, and I saw something I didn't expect in his eyes. Genuine pain. You're right. I don't know her. But I want to. I need to. Why? I demanded. Why now? Why not just leave us alone? Because I never stopped looking. He pulled out his phone, and despite myself, I stepped closer to see what he was showing me. The day after it happened, I went back to that alley. You were gone. I searched every hospital, every Omega clinic within 50 miles. Nothing. The phone screen showed a private investigator's report, dated 5 years ago. Then another. And another. Years of dead ends and false leads. I hired 3 different investigators, he continued. I registered with every Alpha Omega emergency contact database. I even went to the police, though they told me what happened wasn't a crime, just biology. His jaw tightened, as if that made it acceptable. I didn't want to feel sympathy for him. Didn't want to understand. So you finally found me, and your first move is to sue for custody? Not a letter? Not a phone call? I tried. He pulled up an email draft, dated 2 weeks ago. Then another. A dozen attempts at words that never got sent. How do you write that message? Hello, remember when we were both at the mercy of our biology and I couldn't stop myself? Surprise, you might have my child. You should have tried harder, I said coldly. Instead, you sent a lawyer. That wasn't supposed to happen. For the first time, real anger flickered across his face. My attorney filed without my authorization. I told him I wanted to confirm paternity first, to reach out properly. He took it upon himself to protect my interests. The last words dripped with contempt. I fired him yesterday. But you didn't withdraw the lawsuit. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. No, he finally said. I didn't. Get out. Listen to me. Get out. My voice cracked, and I heard Hannah's door open down the hall. I lowered my voice to a harsh whisper. You don't get to do this. You don't get to disrupt our lives because you feel guilty or responsible or whatever this is. She's my daughter. She's my daughter. I carried her. I gave birth to her alone in a hospital where the nurses looked at me with pity because there was no alpha in the waiting room. I've been there for every nightmare, every fever, every scraped knee. You're just DNA. DNA that matters in court. His voice was quiet but firm. I've already spoken to 3 different attorneys. Omega parenting rights have been evolving, but alpha biological claims are still strong. Especially when... He stopped himself. When what? He looked away. When the alpha has significantly more resources. Better living conditions. Stability. The implication hit me like a physical blow. I looked around our shabby apartment with new eyes, seeing it as a judge might. The peeling paint. The 2 small rooms. The toys that were loved but secondhand. You're going to use my poverty against me? My voice shook. I've given her everything I have. I know. And he sounded genuinely sorry. But I can give her more. Private schools. Healthcare. A future without. He gestured vaguely at our surroundings. Without struggle. She's happy, I said desperately. Doesn't that matter? Mommy. Hannah's small voice came from the hallway. She stood there in her birthday dress, clutching her new rabbit, her dark eyes. His eyes, I realized with a sickening jolt, moving between us with concern. Why are you crying? I hadn't realized I was. I wiped my face quickly, forcing a smile. I'm okay, baby. This is just a friend from work. Ji-hoon stared at her with an expression I couldn't name. Wonder maybe. Or hunger. Or grief for all the moments he'd missed. Hi, Hannah said shyly. Hello. His voice came out rough. He cleared his throat. Happy birthday. How did you know? The question hung in the air, innocent and damning. How did he know? Because he'd been investigating us. Because he'd learned everything about our lives while we'd known nothing about his. Lucky guess, I interjected quickly. But my friend has to go now. Ji-hoon's eyes met mine over Hannah's head. A silent war waged in that look, his determination against my desperation. Then he nodded slowly. I'll go, he said. But this isn't over. I'm not going away. He moved toward the door, then paused. I fired that attorney, but I'm getting a new one. A better one. Someone who'll help us figure this out properly. There's nothing to figure out. There's everything to figure out. He looked at Hannah one more time, his expression unreadable. She deserves to know her father. And I deserve a chance to be one. Then he was gone, leaving only the faint scent of pine and rain and the ruins of my carefully built life. Hannah tugged on my sleeve. Mommy, can we have cake now? Yes, baby, I whispered, pulling her close. We can have cake now. But I'd already lost my appetite. The lawsuit papers sat on the counter like a ticking bomb, and I knew with terrible certainty that this was only the beginning. The family court building smelled like floor polish and desperation. I sat on a hard wooden bench outside courtroom 3, watching other broken families shuffle past, and wondered how I'd become one of them. "Stop fidgeting," my lawyer, Attorney Min, said without looking up from her notes. She was sharp, efficient, and expensive, funded by a loan I'd have to repay for the next decade. "You need to appear calm and collected in there." As if that were possible when everything I loved was about to be judged by strangers. Ji-hoon arrived exactly on time, flanked by his new attorney, a silver-haired man whose suit probably cost more than my monthly rent. Our eyes met across the hallway. He looked as tired as I felt. The first hearing was procedural. Establishing paternity, setting ground rules, scheduling mediation. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at both of us with the weary expression of someone who'd seen this story too many times. "DNA test confirms biological paternity," she announced, as if my life hadn't just been reduced to a lab result. "Mr. Kong, you'll begin supervised visitations starting next week. 2 hours, twice weekly at the Family Services Center." "Your Honor," I started, but Attorney Min's hand on my arm stopped me. "Don't," she whispered. "We knew this was coming." I wanted to scream that knowing didn't make it bearable. That Hannah didn't understand why a stranger suddenly had rights to her time, her affection, her future. The visitation center was painted in cheerful yellows and blues that felt like mockery. I watched through a one-way mirror as Ji-hoon sat awkwardly on a too-small chair, trying to make conversation with a 4-year-old who kept looking at the door where I'd disappeared. "She'll warm up," the supervisor said kindly. "They always do." But I didn't want her to warm up. I wanted her to hate him, to make this easy, to choose me without question. The guilt of that desire tasted like ash. By the 3rd visit, Hannah stopped crying when I left. By the 5th, she smiled when she saw him. By the 7th, she called him Mr. Ji-hoon and showed him the drawing she'd made at school. I was losing her. Slowly, inexorably losing her. "The judge will see this as positive," Attorney Min said, reviewing the supervisor's reports. "It shows he's capable of bonding with her, that the relationship has potential." "I don't want it to have potential," I snapped. "I want him gone." She looked at me with something like pity. "Then you need to give me something to work with. Evidence of instability, violence, substance abuse, anything that would make him unfit." But that was the problem. Ji-hoon wasn't unfit. He was patient with Hannah's shyness. He remembered she didn't like loud noises. He brought books instead of expensive toys, seeming to understand that buying her love was the wrong approach. He was trying. And I hated him for it. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Park from the 3rd floor knocked on my door one evening, holding a manila envelope. "I wasn't sure if I should," she said nervously. "But you've always been good to my grandson, so—" Inside was a printed news article from 6 years ago. The headline made my blood run cold. "Kang Ji-hoon, heir to Kang Industries, hospitalized following Omega bonding rejection." I read it 3 times, my hands shaking. Ji-hoon had been engaged to an Omega from another wealthy family. A strategic match. But she'd rejected the bond publicly, claiming he'd tried to force a heat cycle to secure the connection. The scandal had been buried quickly. The article was from a small, now-defunct news site, but the damage to his reputation had been severe. "Is this why you were looking for me?" I demanded at our next mediation session, slamming the article onto the table. "To prove you're not the monster this makes you look like." Ji-hoon's face went pale. His attorney immediately reached for the paper, but Ji-hoon stopped him. "Where did you find that?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Does it matter? Is it true?" The mediator tried to intervene. "Perhaps we should take a break." "It's not true," Ji-hoon said, looking directly at me. "The engagement was arranged by our families. She wanted out but didn't want to be the one to break it. So she lied. Claimed I'd done something unforgivable. By the time I could defend myself, the story had already spread." He laughed bitterly. "My own family didn't believe me. Said I should have just accepted her rejection quietly instead of making a scene by denying it." Why should I believe you? Because you were there that day in the alley. His eyes held mine. You felt it too, the loss of control, the inevitability. If I were the kind of alpha who forced bonds, who manipulated omega biology for my own gain, would I have apologized? Would I have tried to walk away? I wanted to dismiss it, to cling to my anger. But memory betrayed me. The way his hands had shaken. The genuine horror in his voice when he'd said I'm sorry. The jacket he'd given me, a futile gesture of protection after everything had already gone wrong. This doesn't change anything, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. It changes everything. His attorney leaned forward. My client has been publicly accused of bond manipulation. If that comes up in court, it will destroy his custody case. Unless. He looked at me meaningfully. Unless the Omega he actually bonded with testifies that it was biological circumstance, not coercion. The trap snapped shut around me. Testify for him, help his case. Or use the article against him and watch a potentially innocent man lose his daughter based on a lie. I need time, I said. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I called Jihun directly. I want the truth, I said when he answered. Not the legal version. Not the version that helps your case. The truth about why you really want custody. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Because I'm terrified, he finally said. That scandal destroyed my relationship with my family. My father disowned me. My mother won't speak to me. I built my own company from nothing, proved I could succeed without them, but I've been alone for 6 years. His voice cracked. And then I found out I had a daughter. A child who exists because of the worst day of both our lives. And I thought, maybe this is my chance. To have family again. To be someone's person. She's not a remedy for your loneliness. I know. But maybe I could be something good in her life anyway. Maybe I could be the father I never had. I closed my eyes, feeling the ground shift beneath me. This wasn't the villain I'd needed him to be. This was just another broken person, trying to build something from ruins. The article, I said. I won't use it against you. But I won't testify for you either. Whatever the court decides, it has to be based on who we are now, not who we were. Thank you. He sounded genuinely relieved. That's more than fair. Don't thank me yet, I said. I'm still going to fight you with everything I have. I know. And I could hear the smile in his voice. I wouldn't expect anything less. 2 weeks later, the judge delivered her interim ruling. Joint legal custody. Increased visitation, unsupervised. And a requirement for both of us to attend co-parenting counseling. She's splitting the difference, Attorney Min explained. Seeing if you two can figure out how to share her before making a final decision. I walked out of the courthouse into gray afternoon light, feeling like I'd won and lost simultaneously. Jihun caught up to me on the steps. We should talk, he said. About schedules, handoffs, how to tell her. I know. We stood there, 2 strangers bound by biology and law and a 4-year-old girl who deserved better than our mess. I don't forgive you, I said. For finding us. For disrupting everything. I don't forgive you either, he replied. For hiding her from me for 4 years. It wasn't friendship. It wasn't even a truce. But it was honest. And maybe that was enough to start with. The co-parenting counselor's office smelled like lavender and false hope. Dr. Yang sat between us with her clipboard and patient smile, asking questions designed to make us confront uncomfortable truths. What does Hannah need most right now? She asked during our 3rd session. Stability, I said immediately. Love, Jihun said at the same time. We looked at each other and for once, there was no anger in the space between us. Just exhaustion. She can have both, Dr. Yang said gently. But only if you two stop treating this like a war with a winner and loser. The unsupervised visits began that week. I waited in my car outside Jihun's apartment building, watching the clock, my stomach in knots. He'd promised to have her back by 6. At 5:58, my phone rang. We're in the lobby, he said. But she's asleep. Should I wake her or? I'll come up. His apartment was nothing like I'd imagined. I'd expected cold luxury, a showpiece designed to impress judges. Instead, I found organized chaos, a corner filled with Hannah's drawings taped to the wall, a bookshelf at her height, a kitchen table with 2 chairs and evidence of a tea party. Hannah was curled up on the couch, clutching the stuffed rabbit I'd given her for her birthday. Ji-hoon had covered her with a blanket, and there was a gentleness in how he watched her sleep that made my chest ache. "She wanted to wait up for you," he said quietly. But we went to the park and she ran around for 2 hours straight. I sat down next to her, brushing hair from her face. Was she good? She was perfect. He hesitated, then sat in the chair across from us. She asked me why I wasn't there when she was a baby. My heart stopped. What did you tell her? The truth. A version of it, anyway. That I didn't know she existed, but I've been looking for her since I found out. That I'm sorry I missed so much. And what did she say? She said it's okay because I'm here now. His voice was rough with emotion. Then she asked if that meant she could have 2 birthday parties from now on. Despite everything, I laughed. It came out watery, half sob. That sounds like her. She's remarkable. You've done an incredible job with her. The compliment should have felt like victory, but instead it felt like something breaking open inside me. I was so scared, I admitted. When you showed up, when you filed that lawsuit, I thought you were going to take her away from me. I was scared too, he said. That you'd disappear again. That I'd lose my chance to know her. We sat in the quiet of his apartment, our sleeping daughter between us, and for the first time, I saw him clearly. Not as the stranger from the alley, not as the enemy in court, but as another parent who loved Hannah fiercely and was terrified of failing her. I don't want to fight anymore, I said. Neither do I. The final custody hearing arrived in late autumn. The courtroom was nearly empty, just us, our attorneys, and the judge who would decide our future. I'd spent the night before sick with anxiety, playing out every possible outcome. But Ji-hoon surprised me again. Your Honor, his attorney stood, my client would like to withdraw his petition for primary custody. The words didn't make sense. I looked at Attorney Min, who looked equally shocked. Ji-hoon kept his eyes forward, his jaw tight. The judge raised an eyebrow. Mr. Kong, do you understand what you're doing? Yes, Your Honor. I'm asking instead for a formal shared custody arrangement. Equal legal custody, with primary physical custody remaining with the mother, and a generous visitation schedule that allows our daughter to maintain her current home and school while building a relationship with me. This is highly unusual, the judge said. Your original petition was much more aggressive. I was afraid, Ji-hoon said simply. Afraid that anything less than primary custody meant I'd lose her again. But I've learned that being a father isn't about control or ownership. It's about putting your child's needs first. And right now, Hannah needs her mother. She needs the home they've built together. She just also needs me. In whatever capacity works for her. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what I was hearing. The judge looked at me. Ms. Seo, how do you feel about this proposal? How did I feel? Relief. Gratitude. And something else. Something I wasn't ready to name. I swallowed hard. I think Hannah deserves to have both her parents. And I'm willing to work with Mr. Kong to make that possible. The judge smiled, a real smile this time. Then let's make it official. The custody agreement was finalized by December. Ji-hoon got Hannah every Wednesday evening and alternating weekends. Holidays would be split. Major decisions made jointly. It wasn't perfect, but it was fair. The first joint holiday was Christmas. We'd agreed to do it together for Hannah's sake, at my apartment since it was smaller and she'd be more comfortable. Ji-hoon arrived early with groceries and an expensive coffee maker that made me roll my eyes. I'm not accepting gifts, I said. It's not a gift. It's a bribe so you'll make better coffee when I'm here for pickups. You're impossible. You're stubborn. Hannah ran between us, excited about presents and cookies and having both her parents in one place. We cooked together, awkwardly at first, then with growing ease. Ji-hoon told terrible jokes that made Hannah giggle. I taught him how she liked her hot chocolate. We moved around each other like dancers learning a new routine. After Hannah went to bed, we sat on the couch with wine and the comfortable silence of people who'd been through war together. I got a call from my mother last week, Ji-hoon said suddenly. She wants to meet Hannah. My protective instincts flared immediately. The family that disowned you? Yes. Apparently, having a grandchild changes perspectives. He stared into his wine. I told her she'd have to wait. That it was your decision too. Do you want them in her life? He was quiet for a long time. I want her to have family. Real family. People who show up and stay, not because biology demands it, but because they choose to. Whether that includes my parents. He shrugged. We'll figure it out. We, I repeated. You keep saying that. Because it's true. We're in this together now. For better or worse. I looked at him, really looked, and saw someone who'd become familiar. Not a stranger, not an enemy, but a partner in the most important job either of us would ever have. For better or worse, I agreed. I'm not demanding you marry me, he said carefully. I'm asking if you'll choose me. Every day, knowing you're completely free to walk away. No debts, no obligations. Just us. Tears poured down my face. This dangerous man, this criminal who'd bought me at auction, was offering me the one thing he'd never given anyone, vulnerability. You're an idiot, I sobbed. Of course I choose you. 4 months later, I went into labor naturally at exactly 38 weeks. This time there was no violence, no fear. Just Taehyun holding my hand, looking absolutely terrified as I squeezed hard enough to bruise. You're doing amazing, he kept saying, though he looked ready to faint. You're never touching me again, I growled through a contraction. He actually laughed, kissing my forehead. We both know that's a lie. When our daughter finally arrived, tiny and screaming and absolutely perfect, Taehyun cried. He held her with shaking hands, this man who'd killed without hesitation, weeping openly at the miracle of life. Hello, Hannah, he whispered. I'm your daddy. I promise I'll spend every day being worthy of you. 6 months later, I stood in our new kitchen, watching through the window as Taehyun played with Hannah in the garden of our suburban home. She squealed with delight as he lifted her into the air, his laughter pure and unguarded. We'd left the penthouse, left the violence behind. Juno ran the organization now while Taehyun consulted from a safe distance. We were building something normal, something beautiful from the ashes of trauma. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. Dinner Sunday? Miho wants to show his uncle Taehyun his soccer trophy. I smiled, texting back confirmation. My family had fully embraced Taehyun, especially after he'd saved Miho's life. Taehyun came inside, Hannah babbling happily in his arms. He kissed my forehead, then my lips, his eyes soft with contentment. Happy? He asked. I thought about everything we'd survived. The auction, the fear, the blood and violence. But I also thought about the love we'd fought for, the family we'd created against impossible odds. Yes, I said honestly, pulling them both close. I'm happy. Because this wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy and complicated and built on a foundation of trauma. But it was ours. Every day, we chose each other. Every day, we chose love over darkness. Our story started in chains, but we'd found freedom together. And that made all the difference.